Black Friday is just about here, and with it, the unofficial start of the holiday shopping season. Compared to this time last year, Canadians are seeing lower interest rates and lower inflation. So what will that mean when it comes to spending?
Balance sheets might be healthy, economic data might be pretty good. That, unfortunately, is not reflected in consumer sentiment. Sounds weird, doesn't it?
That's our guest today, retail expert John Zamparo.
Inflation's come down, disposable income growth has been pretty healthy, house prices are up, stocks are up. Not really reflected in what consumers are feeling, though. So I think this will be a more traditional Black Friday from the sense that consumers will be highly incentivized to seek out better deals. I also think they're going to prioritize essentials more than luxuries.
John's an analyst in retail and consumer products at Scotiabank, and he'll talk with Armina Lagaya about how this Black Friday is shaping up and take the pulse of Canadian consumers and retailers. He'll tell us where we may see some discounts, where prices may have actually gone up, what sort of retail trends he's seeing, and much more. I'm Stephen Maurice, and this is Perspectives. Now here's Armina Lagaya.
John, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Armina. Pleasure to be here.
Before we get into details here, what's your take on this year's Black Friday? How is it shaping up compared to previous years? What's the headline here? How would you sum it up?
I would frame it as proceed with caution from perspective of retailers and from consumers as well.
So what does that mean, proceed with caution?
For retailers, it's going to be a tough year, I think. Consumers might not actually be pinched, but they feel that way. And retailers have seen cost inflation through multiple sources for many years. They're struggling to maintain margins. At the same time, they do want to generate traffic, though. So I don't think it's going to be a particularly easy year for retailers to navigate Black Friday. Same goes for consumers. Balance sheets might be healthy. Economic data might be pretty good. That, unfortunately, is not reflected in consumer sentiment. So I think we're going to see a pretty promotional Black Friday and more in line with pre-pandemic times.
Mm-hmm. So retailers are feeling pinched, but consumers might not be pinched, but feel like they're pinched.
Sounds weird, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So let's go into that a little bit more. So there's a real delta between objective economic data and subjective consumer perception. So on the economic data side, inflation's come down, disposable income growth has been pretty healthy, consumer balance sheets are really good, house prices are up, stocks are up. Not really reflected in what consumers are feeling, though. And if you look at subjective data, and we track this through a few different measures, the most useful one in our view is the Conference Board Consumer Sentiment Index. That's indexed to about 10 years ago. 100 is kind of the baseline score. It's gotten as high as 125 in the past. Peak pandemic was down around 50. We're at about 70 right now. So not particularly healthy. Much better than a year ago, but still not particularly healthy. A lot of this stems from inflation, and it feels like we've been talking about it for 5 years, and it doesn't really matter to a lot of consumers that inflation's back to normal levels. They're still shocked at the absolute pricing on a lot of the items they see. And it takes time. For most consumers, they've never seen this level of inflation. For consumers 50, 55 and under, they've never seen this pace. So it takes years to adjust, and I don't think we're there yet.
That's really interesting because that's what I was going to ask you about. Because in theory, the economy is in a much different place than it was last year. The things you mentioned, inflation is lower, although absolute prices have not moved and are not coming down. But interest rates have come down too. So how does that sort of improved economic condition impact this Black Friday?
I don't think consumers spend too much time thinking about these macro pieces that you and I are talking about. I think for them, it is a very household-based budgeting exercise. So yeah, inflation's back down to normal levels, but the price that most consumers have in their mind for many products is still exorbitantly higher over the past few years. And I think that matters more than anything. Questions I still get from some friends and family are, when are prices going to come back down again? And that's really not how this works. If we see deflation, that would shock most people or most economists. So the absolute level of pricing, I think, matters more than the rate of change versus a year ago. And interest rates coming down does help. For the most part, though, many consumers still have not faced higher rates on their mortgages. By the end of this year, we'll get about 2/3 of mortgage holders who will face quote unquote current rates. So it is a helpful measure to see rates come down, to see inflation normalize, but I don't think it matters as much as some might expect.
So does that mean maybe this year more compared to previous years, Canadians are really waiting for Black Friday, for a deal to make any big or even maybe small purchase?
I think this will be a more traditional Black Friday from the sense that consumers will be highly incentivized to seek out promotions and better deals. I also think they're going to prioritize essentials more than luxuries for the average Canadian. But I think the most promotional items on Black Friday are typically electronics, furniture, things like that. That's what you're going to see deals on this year again. I think everyone's kind of back to the regular routine when it comes to Black Friday. And what's interesting is those categories that are typically promoted highly on Black Friday, those have been some of the worst performing categories from a year-over-year sales perspective, furniture and electronics being good examples. We have a proprietary tracker at Scotia where we look at credit card data and what is doing well and what's doing less well. Entertainment just keeps moving. Health and wellness, another category that's been really resilient. Travel, obviously. Anyone who's been to an airport recently can see that. But furniture and electronics are a more challenged category. They did so well during 2021 to 2022. A lot of that spending was pulled forward, and you're going to have to see more promotions on that, I think, to see those categories outperform. What has changed more recently? Retailers are extending Black Friday to be a much longer period. And it used to be a day, and we'd all see those videos of people running into one another to physically get into a store. Thank goodness it's a little more calm nowadays. But it extended to Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. It was a 4-day event. Now it's weeks long. Even 2 weeks before Black Friday starts, Amazon's Black Friday specific sale begins. So retailers are trying to stretch out this period where consumers can receive discounts. But when I say traditional, I more mean supply chains have largely normalized. Inventory balances are typical. We're not worried about safety stock or just getting your hands on an item. It was always meant to be a very promotional time, and I think it'll be promotional once again.
So as we record this, we have a postal workers strike across Canada. How is that going to affect Black Friday and holiday purchasing?
I think it has a real potential for disruption. There are customers out there who may be put off by higher costs or longer wait times to get products they want. This will especially impact Canadians living in rural areas and small businesses that are more reliant on Canada Post. But I think you'll see mostly business as usual when it comes to discounting and promotional levels this Black Friday.
So where do you think consumers will see some deals this season?
The traditional categories like electronics and furniture will be top ones. Kitchen appliances in particular. You can look at flyers now to see what are the most promoted items. Where you're not going to see it, I think, is on services. Anything service-based is just inherently less likely to receive any type of discount. So it's concerts, it's sporting events. Those are extremely strong categories within spending. And we might all complain about the inflation on Taylor Swift tickets. Consumers are willing to accept those. They might grumble about it, but they're still paying for them. But goods, particularly on the home, and pseudo-indulgences, let's call them, for your new TV or your new coffee maker, your new espresso maker, those will be highly promoted items, I think.
So are Canadian consumers still price conscious, or it just depends on the item, actually?
Generally speaking, Canadian consumers are very price conscious. We love a good deal. We love value. We love a good discount. Canadians generally do prefer value. They seek out a good deal. We're highly promotional. I think it's true everywhere that price is an important and maybe the most important factor in determining a purchase. There's data on this as well. Accenture did a study recently. I think it was high 70% range was globally the number of consumers that look at price as their determining factor.
Oh, wow.
In Canada, we're mid-80s. So not a significant difference, but interesting that we're above the average when it comes to caring about price more than anything else. I don't know that the pandemic really has shifted anything about that. I think generally we're a consumer that cares deeply about price and are we getting good value for our money.
It's really interesting that it's actually higher than, I guess, the broader average. Why would that be?
Chalk it up to cultural effects, just who we are. I think this plays out in different ways in the economy too. We don't mind shopping at dollar stores. We don't mind shopping at discount food stores. For a lot of Canadians, we're really proud about saving money. We brag about the deals that we find. How many dinner parties have we all been to where someone says, hey, that's a great item. Oh, I got it at XYZ for only $10. We love talking about these deals.
For sure. You're talking about a dinner party. I also wanted to get your take on consumers spending on restaurants versus at home. Obviously, there was a lot more of a shift towards eating at home, cooking at home. But we also talked about entertainment and those experiences when you get back out again. Where's the Canadian consumer when it comes to dining out or dining in?
It's been an interesting trajectory on eating at home and eating away from home. For the past 20 plus years, there's been this shift towards eating at restaurants and shifting away from food at home. That obviously took a big switch during the pandemic. It really flipped around. Eating at home took a ton of share. That lasted into 21. Go into 22 and to some of 23, restaurants took back some share and consumers sought out experiences. That has largely reversed again, where food at home is taking more share as food inflation really hits consumers. So food at home has taken share in the back half of 23 and into 24. I suspect that's going to continue. I think it's an easy way for many consumers to save money is to eat at home. So that's what I'd expect for this holiday season as well.
What is your take on where the state of food prices are in grocery stores? Where are we now compared to, say, a year ago?
So food inflation now is relatively benign. There was a number that came out very recently. It's low 2% range. That's not going to be much consolation to many people, though. And this is the usual discussion of you can look at what items are seeing low inflation versus high inflation, but that might not matter to consumers. I'll give you an example of seafood. In the latest CPI print, seafood was largely flat on CPI.
Oh.
But it's also one of the most expensive categories going back to 2020, where lobster sales have been impacted recently because their prices are so high. So they might not be changing anymore, but they are still elevated. Beef costs are up, egg costs are up, chicken's relatively benign. But I think for most Canadian consumers, you do what you normally do, which is check your flyer at your favorite store or a few other stores. You can always find a good deal in Canada. There's always different grocers putting on different products where you can get a very manageable budget and you can get by. But you do have to play the flyer game. You do have to buy on promotion and you'd have to be a smart shopper, which a lot of Canadians are.
How about the staples? Turkey, mashed potatoes, butter?
I'd say a mixed picture. Generally, though, turkeys are one of the most promoted items typically. So that won't be an issue for many Canadians. Butter is supply managed, so very predictable pricing on that. But many retailers realize this, though, that many consumers don't necessarily want to go shop at 4 different stores to prepare foods for the holidays. So again, if you pay attention to deals, you can usually find something attractive, and grocers will offer particular offerings around the holiday season.
What about when it comes to shopping at home versus shopping in store? What are Canadian consumers leaning towards now?
We like in-person experiences in Canada. It's very interesting. Whether you look at food or any different part of the e-com percentage of total sales, Canada's typically below the US, the UK, Australia, well below Asia. There's geographic reasons for that. It's not all that easy to get products to people in Canada sometimes, but we are well below the average in most countries when it comes to e-com penetration rate. That's less so on Black Friday. If you look at specific numbers, e-commerce as a percent of sales is 7 or 8% of total retail sales in Canada. For Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that spikes. It's in the high 30s that we like shopping online. So maybe it's the weather, maybe it's the convenience, but we do like shopping from our couch when it comes to the holiday season. But generally speaking, we do like in-person experiences in Canada.
So are we going to see any of those big lines of customers waiting for door crashers?
I don't think so. I think we're past that as a society. We've realized that extending the holiday, quote unquote, holiday to a 4-day period now or even beyond is better for everyone involved. It's better for stores, it's better for customers, and I don't suspect we're going to see too many scenes from the past.
Before I let you go, do you have your eyes on anything this Black Friday? Are you looking for an espresso machine or maybe a PS5?
I wish I could say I had time to play a PS5 nowadays. 2 kids makes that more difficult. I don't know. I think I've already bought my holiday gift for next year. I was lucky enough to get Oasis tickets for August.
Nice.
So maybe Santa came early for me this year.
For sure, for sure. John, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Armina.
I've been speaking with John Zamparo, analyst in retail and consumer products at Scotiabank. The Perspectives podcast is made by me, Armina Lagaya, Stephen Maurice, and our producer, Andrew Norton. For a transcript of this episode, as well as other stories, insights, analysis, and thought leadership, visit our website, scotiabank.com/perspectives. We'll see you next time.